to take the SATs, because think about it, there may be disadvantaged kids around the world that don't have the prep that some of the wealthy families can give. Right, so he's done a phenomenal job. Yeah, that's the future, right?
But he did it as a nonprofit. So that's one of the issues you get into is, you know, is it profit? Is it nonprofit? Is it profit plus nonprofit?
Yeah.
Is it domestic? Is it local? Is it for the rich, for the poor? And Khan has basically said it's for all kids.
That's right. Level the playing field.
Have you ever looked at it? Oh, it's phenomenal. K-A-H-N. Oh, is it
K-H-A-N.
Yeah.
K-A-H-N.
Yeah. He was an MIT student.
Yeah.
Who developed this. He seemed to get good. No, he did it for a friend.
No, a relative.
A relative.
I think it's either a niece or some relative, and he was on one coast, and the kid was on the other coast, and he was good at math. I think California is where the kid was. So there was this dialogue that kept taking place. So he figured, okay, help my niece by writing little notes and emailing them to her, and next thing he knew, she had her friends tapping into it, and they just blossomed.
Yeah, it's really phenomenal. And you can do like astrophysics, or you can do 1 + 1. And
transfer pricing. He's got the stuff that's on there.
See, I know you can take the first year of classes at Wharton online for free. Like, I mean, it's not just, you know, University of Phoenix Online's, you know, free program. Like, these are legitimate professors.
Now, there's a lot of controversy.
You can take classes from Schiller. You can take classes from.
But there is a big I mean, there's growing controversy about this whole online learning, because some of it's good, some of it's not. There's the whole issue of, you know, they say, oh, 200,000 people are taking this course, but then you look at the attrition rates are very high, etc. So Harvard and MIT are putting a lot of money into it, and a former colleague of mine, Larry Bacow, he stepped down as president of Tufts, and he's been involved in this one where Harvard and MIT have gone together. They got a $50 million budget to work with. What do they call it? Moot. Moot. Yeah.
Think about it. What's the difference between 200 people sitting in a lecture hall with 101 distractions and nobody truly cares, versus one individual in a select location saying, I want to learn this and all my focus is going to be on this computer? Which one is higher efficiency?
You don't have the issue of I'm afraid to ask questions in class because of peer pressure.
And it's not even that, but how many people, and this is a knock on education a little bit, I understand that, but how many people go to large universities in their basic classes with 200, 300, 400 people in a lecture hall?
Yeah, but what's worse? It's the instructor's lousy.
Exactly.
That's a bigger problem.
And then you have a bunch of international TAs to actually voice your questions to. And you can't understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
Versus something that's
watch it there. Watch it there.
Try online.
Your English is wonderful.
Learn from YouTube.
Oh, listen, I know
there's something about that.
That's what I'm saying. Watch it.
But I don't think there were some TAs.
Again, you've got to look at the problem you're trying to solve. You know, I think it is necessary, and certainly when you do look at places like India, the only way you're going to get education is through the internet into these small villages and so forth. And what they find in India is you train the mothers to oversee, and they're the people that are. So I mean, you have to have a support system for it. But there's no question, in lots of parts of the world, it'll be the only way we'll be able to solve the problem. And of course, the downside is all the good universities will be the face-to-face, you know, and so that's the nature of the beast.
And we have $1.2 trillion in student debt right now.
Because the cost of education is going up.
We have more student debt in our country than we do credit card debt.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you see, and I think where I was headed with my cloud question was that those who are framing that the future, in other words, that all of the institutions we have today, you know, Google, you know, they are transitional institutions, that ultimately, if you have the internet, right, in its fully developed form, in terms of even including education, as a platform for everybody, okay, and then you have a consensus on how to build that infrastructure to make it a platform for everybody. What kind of future is that? Because all that's a demand. So now the question now is, like the other guy was saying, I want to learn something. If I really want to learn something, the platform is there for me to learn. That would change, you know, the question is, that's a radical demand perspective to all of this. And then, to some extent, you now co-produce, you now co-express. All the demand-oriented services is where you now say, okay, these are the services. How do I need to take all this to customize to that? That's where my value proposition is. Okay, so if you know, the question is the demand side of it, okay, complement with this, but that's a different approach. That you know the Cisco's of the world, IBM, already that's what they call intelligent city, intelligent platforms, smart and connected community. All they're saying is that if we can integrate all of this technology,
and make a pile of money,
and give you a platform, it's a single platform.
No.
Well, that is mobile.
Yeah, I think they're not quite that altruistic. I think that they're simply looking at where they can make money. And I went to Cisco and looked at all this technology, and I said, you know.
I'm not talking about the technology. I'm talking in terms of what the value proposition is when they succeed. Because I don't even know how to do it. What I'm saying is that if you have the internet as a utility, right? That you don't have to worry about access, you don't have to worry about paying for it, just like like roads.
Well, who pays for it?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what we're saying. If you don't have to worry about that, it becomes a utility that everybody has access to, that is paid for, and all that is solved.
So it becomes a free good?
Well, yes, it becomes a social good.
Well, one of the things I found about free goods is you can never get me enough.
See, it's not about free good. It's not free. It's social good. That's what I was saying. Is that the social overhead is something that society needs to create. So it becomes a platform for creativity. It will be funded either through taxes or through, but that's a separate issue. I'm not even going to go into that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that.
Then it won't work anymore.
What?
As soon as that happens,
see, the trouble, I mean, this is getting into technology. The trouble with the internet,
private internet.
is it's based on the old principle of a pipe. And the more people that withdraw from the pipe, it's slower it gets. And so one of the big issues we get into is to what extent are internet providers able to throttle the pipe? And they say, well, we need to throttle it at the stage where it's reaching capacity. So it's a whole set of technical issues when you deal with internet. I'm not an expert in it, but certainly that's a big debate that we're having, is to what extent do internet providers have the right to throttle the pipe.
But see, that I understand. I mean,
okay, let's get back to sustainability.
I know, but see, the issue is that the technology that I thought is being solved, through quantum mechanics. Because I understand now, Google already have bought some, some computers now, in which they are doing what they call simultaneous computing, not even parallel processing anymore. So that all the capacity issue now disappear. Is it very, very expensive? But when you... I guess I have a bias. I'm back to the issue of gardening. And I think that a lot of sustainability will go back to the stage where each of us know our limits in our ability to look after ourselves. Okay, I like the technology, and I'm very careful how I use it, and I'm very careful about my values, but the thing that interests me more is how do I gain, remember the very first scheme? Independence, right? How my values, number one. And so I think that what we need to do is almost the other end, and that is to make sure that people have what you almost think are survival skills today, and an appreciation for them, and putting a value on it. Because I can tell you the young population would agree with you. Look, I don't need to worry about that. The technology, here, move over, I'll show you what you do. I looked at YouTube, and there's a 10-minute video on how to grow vegetables. Okay, but grow them. What do you mean grow them? The video shows me how to do it. So I think that a big part of sustainability will in fact be our ability to gain back some of the skills that we've lost. The problem is we only have 24 hours in a day. And everything you do, you've got to give something up. And when I see that the average teenager spends 8 hours a day on the internet, that's scary. That's very scary.
I wanted to know, there was one example for the integrated home services. We're at the ULI Trends event, I guess it was last week. They're doing like a Shark Tank. This guy had an idea and wanted to get money. And he's doing an I-unit, and so it's prefabricated modular apartment units that are like 300, 400 square feet. And the whole thing is controlled by your app. The I-unit app, and your lights, your temperature, all of those things are controlled by this app on your phone. And the whole thing is completely wirelessly integrated, including wireless charging stations.
Yeah.
So just put it down, do it.
I saw that in Bangalore.
It's
Cisco
expensive.
has built 5 buildings there. And the 4th building, they put in the duplicate, like they had the switches and the cell phone. And in the final building, they just went with the cell phone. And they said, it's not working. I said, what do you mean? I said, the majority of people want to go in and do the light switch. And the fact that they're so dependent, like I saw yesterday flying down, day before flying down here, oh, you know, get your boarding pass on your phone. Well, the guy in front of me, his phone didn't work.
And it never scans.
And they said, sir, you'll have to step out of line.
Yeah.
So I mean, Cisco's trying to sell this in. So again, I think we have to be able to measure where it's something we need.
Well, everyone's question to him was, what do you do when the power goes out? Or what do you do when your internet goes out? Because that's kind of it. And my question is, are you really reducing any energy savings at that point?
Yeah. Well, redundant, yeah.
On that specific issue, why do we even have boarding passes? I mean, you've checked in, you have like a photo ID that says it's you. They should have on their computer that you are on the plane. There you are, get on the plane.
Oh, don't get me into traffic.
See, but I think,
I mean, the whole thing is just completely pointless.
I mean, I guess maybe I'm a little bit confused here. Maybe help me out. If this is saying that this is what the future looks like, we're not saying it's successful today.
No, I don't have any idea what the future looks like.
Okay, what is this opportunity? I know was if we
I just think they're ideas.
If we could solve these problems, the future would look. I mean,
No.
Okay.
Every one of you could generate your own list of things that might be interesting. This is only my. I'm not promising you anything. It's not going to be a better one. I'm just simply trying to drive home the point that entrepreneurs today have an incredible opportunity to begin to move into space that they haven't moved into before. I guess, you know what I'm saying, is my confidence is in the entrepreneurs and their ability to innovate. And it might be as simple as, you know, how do I help people plant an organic garden? Doing an organic garden is a very difficult thing to do. And
the ultimate entrepreneurship is something that I can create
for myself.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. You see, I thought I understood what your point
was.
No.
Don't get me wrong. I didn't say if you do these, we'll have a better world.
No, I thought you said, what you just said right now is what I thought you were saying. That is, you're talking about entrepreneurship, and the ultimate entrepreneurship.
I just said some new business opportunities.
Well, you know, I mean.
You know, and each of you would have your own list.
Well, okay.
And you know, I'm not defending these. Just at the end, I thought, you know, what are some of the things that we should be looking at? Maybe, you know, you take a class and you give this as an assignment, and you say pick one and come back with a business plan. I mean, we're in education, so I'm not here to pontificate about how to build a better world. In the end, it's how to do a better course. And so. I'm saying, gee, you know, maybe in my next course, I'll give this out and say, come back with a business plan. Don't solve the technology, but design the business plan, and in it, tell me what you would have to do. Because that's what we're all about here. As I say, our job is to ask the questions, not give the answers.
Our job as real estate developers, though, are to make things work.
Exactly.
We've got to figure out the possibilities, and clearly, learning how we've done it is important. Having our head on the edge of what's going to happen to new technologies, you know, and bringing that in. This whole discussion of sustainability, and you said right at the beginning, this is a thinking course.
It is.
And we've had.
And that scares students, by the way.
Well, it's a scary thought, right? But you know, and the few equations we had was price minus cost equals price minus profit equals cost. That's the only equation we had.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's been quite after 240 slides, we've covered a lot of material here, and the two most beautiful days of the summer, and I appreciate everybody being here.
Yeah.
That's just terrific. And we don't have a formal evaluation deal, and we're thrashing our way through trying to pull this together. So I invite you all to tell me, you can tell me in the hallway or stop by what you thought, what you'd like to see, where it's going. We've covered everything. We're getting down to boarding passes, we're probably close to the end.
Yeah.
But, you've done a great job for us, and I appreciate that. Let's give it.
Look, I'm not the sage. I can only teach what I know, and this is not very much. And going back to my first comment, I don't know about your business school, but if I put the word finance in the title of the course, it would be oversubscribed. But if I put the word sustainability,
Who would have more Asians here?
no, but it's.
I'm nodding to your point, not to them making fun of me
Yeah,
for being
yeah.
a math-oriented person.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I do think that you have to think of, how you develop it and what's interesting to you. For me, it's still a kind of a venture. I'm discovering stuff all the time, thanks to my students, who basically uncover most of this material for me. There is no textbook. I've searched the field to try and find it. So, but I don't think you can avoid it. So.
Can I add to that? As somebody that's working in the finance world, right? There's this whole term that I'm sure we're all familiar with called impact investing, right? Back to your finance analogy, that's becoming very prevalent in the industry, where now it's, whatever you do has to have impact, and everybody's bought into it. It's the same concept, just from the finance point of view, right? And it's more of a discussion of profit plus social benefits. It's more stakeholder value discussions, right? And it's all the same thing, right? The sovereign wealth funds, the pension funds, they're all tuned into it. And now you're starting to see impact investment funds, right? Where that's a big part of the equation, right? So yeah, that's the way the world is going anymore. The finances, you put the word impact investing in front of this, and yes, you're right. This guy's going to be packed. So that's the key. We're wrestling with it.
Yeah. I also think that people going through business school are largely interested in their own personal gains forward. And because of the way that our economy is priced, the high-paying jobs are in finance. So we want to take all the courses that have as much finance on it, so that when our resume comes through the system, people say, "Oh, you might be good for a finance job, and now we'll give it to you."
Guess
versus
what?
we need to be paying our teachers $75,000 a year so that we don't have enormous dropout rates.
By the way, we found out that despite what the students think, there aren't jobs in finance and they're not high paying. We have found that industry has gone through a huge shedding, and the notion that you're going to go out and get a big signing bonus and earn all this money, the jobs aren't there. But it's going to take a while for the students to realize. But we've discovered that market is very different than a few years ago.
It went away 12 years ago, and I went back to business school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
12 years or 14 years now later, right? And Wall Street's, basically this is what's happening now with Wall Street,
yeah.
right? So you're absolutely right. That whole equation is changing. It has changed.
And a struggle I have is how to teach entrepreneurship.
It's too hard.
You can't.
It's very difficult.
The only thing that drives entrepreneurship is truly finding a passion and following that passion, creating ideas. And the hard part is you can't create thinking or stretching outside the box.
I mean, come back to what Dan said. I mean, that's one of the great strengths of the real estate industry, is that these people were entrepreneurs. They took great risk, personal risk, hard work. The one thing that they didn't need necessarily was a good education, right? Now, today you do, I think it's fair to say. So I'm not in any way putting it down. So
These people do.
yeah.
See, but what you just said right now, again, remember what the saying you said yesterday, that, was it something about sheep, about thinking independently?
No, I was
a
just
cheap shot.
I was being facetious, saying that developers often make sheep look like independent
Okay.
thinking.
You know, I guess what I'm saying is that one of the
Regulators do.
well, I mean, what I draw from that is that one of the reasons why a lot of developers make a lot of money is because of the fact that they have large personality. As you said, they don't understand the risk, they just take it, and when problems come, they just solve it and get going. But now, as the industry has changed, that is not just longer that you can make money by just being in the field, you have to know what you're doing. The price of the risk, that has made, anyway.
Speaking of sheep posturing, that's, and coming to closure. Last thoughts, final comments. And Jonathan, I want everybody to your closing thought or final comments. Jonathan, do you have a closing thought or final comments? It's optional.
Well, first of all, I'd just really like to thank you for coming all the way down from Canada to speak to our group. I wish that it was a larger group because I felt that the past 2 days were incredibly helpful. And you definitely got across a large volume of information in a short amount of time. And it was all very digestible, which I think it takes a lot of talent to be able to teach this kind of material in a digestible way. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And it's given me a lot to think about. Yeah, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, final thoughts, closing comments.
I would just like to say thank you also. It was very fascinating. There's a lot of different things that I haven't thought about before that you brought to my attention. A lot of problems that need to be solved. Just a lot to think about.
Kimberly, final thoughts, closing comments?
As an anthropology undergrad, I was really excited to see an anthropologist in this discussion. So that was exciting. And then to the point about making this into classes, and you guys working on coursework, I like the fall sort of 2-day workshop. I liked that as a package, if that was a course. And then these 2 days as a package, as sort of a sustainability course. And maybe like taking this and molding it with our current sustainability course. That was a lot more with like zoning and community planning. I think it would go well together, especially with that Edmonton example. So I really liked the way it was packaged between two, because it made it easier to categorize and kept a nice theme going throughout. So.
Mir.
I would like to challenge your call for more entrepreneurs because it is one of the most brutal experiences you can ever go through.
I know.
But I would encourage large established companies to nurture entrepreneurship in their employees so that they're the eyes and feet on the ground that can keep their companies at the cutting edge.
Yeah, I agree. There's one big company in California, I forget which one it is, but you're allowed 1 day a week to do your own work.
Yeah, it might be temperament too. Myers-Briggs type of, an entrepreneurial temperament.
Yeah, yeah.
But Colleen.
Hello.
Final thoughts.
It was really good. I really enjoyed this. I think actually after the ULI Trends event, this kind of helped that come into play. I really liked all the examples that you gave. It helped highlight where you were going with it and make me understand more. In regards to this with the infrastructure, my only one thing would be is if this was before the infrastructure instead of the infrastructure first. I guess it was also at the beginning of school, so it was a lot of information being thrown at us.
That's what we do.
Yeah, it was hard to digest that one, and I don't know if it's because I've just been studying more and this was easier, but maybe switching them in the future.
Yeah.
That is what you do? You start off with this first and then you do the PPP?
Yeah, yeah. Because the PPP one is really technical.
Yeah, it was really good. It was just a lot of information as well, and I liked it. Thank you again for coming. We really appreciate having you.
Oh no, I enjoy it. I really do.
And for our own entrepreneurial student, Kyle, what are your last thoughts or closing comments?
I think the biggest thing that I took away from this was how technology goes into real estate and the idea of not just green, but using technology in different ways to counteract development and infrastructure. And I don't know if it could be applied, but I think that would be a really cool class to be a part of, or added on just the technological side of real estate or different systems working together, but I'm just not sure how it would be put together on a full platform.
I think it's a good point, because I often wonder if I should get into teaching some of the technical, you know, whether it's the slab system, but there's some really interesting things happening on the building science end of it, and I think real estate people would gain tremendously. At least they'd be knowledgeable enough to sit at the table and say, I have a question, you know, why are we doing?
That's a great debate about teaching real estate.
Yeah.
You know, where does the building sciences come in?
Yeah.
To what extent?
Yeah.
You're right. Isaac, last closing thoughts, final comments?
Yeah, you know, I appreciate the discussion. I mean, this is unfortunately, I'm at a disadvantage because this is my field. I know it very well. I thought I did. And I was finding ways to connect my own perspectives, my own understanding of this issue with the presentation. And I think it's very complementary in the sense of, you know, the demand side that is supposed to drive this, essentially, because I think, but I understand James' background and presentation. So that was missing for me, and I was trying to see if I was missing the boat or just connecting. But I think I finally figured out that they're very complementary, they're not competitive, but in the end, demand and supply has to come together. But the sustainable future is going to rely on the demand side, you know, giving the platforms to consumers to figure things out for themselves. So
well, I'll admit to my bias as an architect.
Yeah, so that's
I was trained to see things in a certain way.
Exactly. So I mean that finally I see these, they're very complementary. Okay, in the sense. So thank you very much. So I learned a lot from this. But
Lenka, what are you thinking? Last comment, final closing thoughts?
You've heard all the great comments already about what a great job you did. I want to echo them. I'm not going to repeat them. You don't need to hear that from me anymore, unless you want to, right? I was just sitting here as a finance person, go back to that, and we have 3 classes, right? And the 3 need to be integrated. I'm curious as to how we can integrate more of the finance aspect into this. Going back to your point, I just don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, because we're going to be, I'm always wondering, okay, what's my piece? I don't always get it out of what I'm hearing here, even though I know it's an important part of it. Or everything we do as developers, we always have to overlay that capital structure, you know, and I don't know that it belongs here, but for what it's worth, that's a lot of what was going through my mind as I was listening to a lot of this, is the tie-in, right, to that 3rd class.
Yeah, the Gates can't fund everything.
There you go. Absolutely. So
no, I think it's a good point that, again, at the university, it's our obligation to try and at least show connections between things. Unfortunately, I don't know enough yet in order to do that.
I know. Yeah, that's a challenge. But yeah, thanks. No, appreciate your time.
So we'll go to the Dean of Infrastructure at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, Edward St. John Real Estate Program. Mike Yannick, what do you want to say?
You know, I think when we started this program yesterday, I mentioned that the Dean asked us to come up with infrastructure, and at the time I wasn't sure what we were doing and what that all meant. James's name came up a moment ago, you know, when it was calling around, and he said, well, you know, basically, you know, he ran the program up at MIT, the master's program, so he was able to give us suggestions as to how we can modify the courses which you've already had. But he said there are 3 areas where you need to, you know, create new courses. those of you that sat in on the PPP were in the first course, and this is, you know, it's, what, your course is 36 hours or something like that, so it's 1/3, so I'm sure the best third of the classes. But we wanted a sampling, and then the other course is project finance, which we have got, you know, your syllabus, and we have a, Sue Chen has put together a syllabus for that. So those are the three things, and that information coupled with, I think, modification of our current classes, is to give you an overview of what this is. You know, a lot of the things that James talked about has already been done. You know, I think he kept referring to Scandinavia, and we certainly saw the stuff that they were doing at Edmonton and so forth. So for me, you know, I'm way back when I was a sociologist and worried about sort of one of the concepts was diffusion of innovation. And so how do you get these new ideas or ideas which have already been identified and discovered in Scandinavia, how do you get that into our system? And what's it going to do when that happens? I mean, we talked about the fact that, you know, LEED Gold is now, you know, is the basic acceptable level. You're going to have to be LEED Platinum in order to have an edge. But what's going to happen to all those, you know, LEED Silver buildings that you just financed for 20 years? You know, is that you know, discount rate the appropriate rate for those things? So I think that's something you have to take into. A friend of ours, Glenn Miller, had taught his finance class, and they, you know, they read all the spreadsheets, and they did all the analysis. It was, you know, Green Gardens and Red Valley, I think, were the two subdivisions, and you were supposed to decide which one was the one you were going to invest in. And so they read all of the stuff that you normally read in your financial reports, and they took a vote in the class, and they all decided on, you know, Green Gardens. But then what he did is he brought out a slideshow, and they saw, you know, they actually saw the physical structures and how they were operating, and they completely changed their minds. And so what we're trying to get across here is that it's an iterative process, and you have to know what the product is, and you ought to visit the product, you know, which many of our financial friends don't do. And check out some of these things like our curtain wall. Now we know, you know, from our discussion and what the pros and cons are. You need to understand that stuff, and a lot of that stuff we're talking about, the stuff that I think we're introduced now, will make you a better investor in the long run. So I'm thank you very much. It's been very helpful to me.
I just thought of something on your finance, and Mike just prompted it. There's a crossover between project finance and real estate finance, because many of these things aren't assets, aren't tangibles, but they're forward contracts. And so that's project finance. Yeah. But there are things that are, you know, $300 house is an asset. But it's interesting, because that's really the confluence of two very different financial models. And so that would be interesting. You don't, if you're going to fund a cell phone, you know, grow your own light user fee. I mean, you can't do that as an asset-based lending. Yeah. So it'd be interesting. I think your point is well taken, to sort of think through how do you really, what's the capital structure of these different things.
Can I add to that too? Because I'm a civil engineer, right? And so I bring a whole other to the development, you know, equity discussion, and I find, I mean, your point's well taken, and that is, I sit at meetings, and you're right, the people that spew out the numbers are missing all these other components that make the whole great, right? And the example that I give a lot is, you know, I worked for a boss back at one of the funds that for a long time didn't understand the importance of schedule, right? And I was explaining to a lot of my consultants, you know, just the language, nomenclature that we use in the business, you know, back to what you're saying, because this is really all a part of that. It adds to that understanding, right? To be that developer that interacts with the banks to get this thing funded. And we went through a process where ultimately my partner actually asked the question. And that's when all the other consultants said, wait a minute, my phone rang off the hook after that. We thought you were kidding. So this is really important. And for me, on the finance side, I also see a schism between the infrastructure world and the vertical and the horizontal world, even within the finance. It's such a huge schism. And when I was saying about the infrastructure conference that I went to recently, I asked a real estate question. Everybody looked at me like, you know,
what are you doing here?
yeah, right? And that's the world we're trying to bring together here.
Yeah,
right?
well, I firmly believe that there is a mixing, and there's also respect for the differences.
Correct.
So, to James, back to you to bring it to a close. Your closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, you know, it's the purpose of this exploration. I feel a bit like, you know, I've turned on the fire hose and said, take a sip. There's, you know, there's more material. But if I didn't do it, it wouldn't be justice to, you know, what the excitement of this area and your ability to land wherever you want. I don't really have any vested interest. You can say, I don't really care about this, but I like this piece. So I'm not saying that you have to adopt the comprehensive overview. Pick a piece, teach it well, motivate people, and go from there. So that's why I tried to cram probably more than I should have into it. But if I didn't, it wouldn't allow you to make some of the choices that you have to make when you're going forward. I've enjoyed it the last 3 years, and every time I go to teach it, I'm always thinking, oh God, I mean, I got to go and figure out what's happened in the world in the last 12 months. This is a very fast-moving field.
Right.
You know, I look at all this McKinsey stuff, and now they're talking about this humongous change in 10 years. And I'm thinking, God, 10 years. You know, that used to be the lifespan of my car. Right? Didn't you say 13 years?
That's right.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our infrastructure workshop number 2. Good night and thank you.
Thanks. Good, good luck with your entrepreneurial endeavor.
I need to interview more than one.
I was going to thank Lynn for doing everything, but he left.
Yes, Liz.
Yeah, he does a
I
good
just
thing.
pull weeds on rooftops.
You just do what?
Pull weeds on rooftops.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You want to join?
Well, maybe. Depends.
Finance
You go feed me?
on a daily basis. We'll have to find you
But
a
you know, I
rooftop farm
have
to make
become,
that
I
happen.
think what I will
You'd
do,
have to feed me. Then you can do that.
Let me feed myself first.
Okay.
Release the ground.
But I can find that students are kind of interested in.
Everybody thinks vertical is what it's all about. So all that plan, the sustainable planning, is all done on the front end. What you talked about yesterday.
All the front end.
Yeah. And so
90% of the decisions are at the design stage.
exactly. And I think that's so important. That's what I appreciate you doing that. I brought my little things there so that. But the green building.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff. I mean, it's all kind of cheap, it's college and stuff, right?
And, you know, the whole PV thing. Pretty bad actions. Especially when you start talking about this.
First one.
That affects.
Yeah.
I was amazed, how do you get?
But I think you can get some great student assignments.
But they're supposed to have
Yeah.
two.
Well, it's interesting, we have a number of our international students, we had a couple, but.
Where's the $1?
Oh, are they?
I believe it.
Well, I didn't know that. No one told. So,
I'll be at both of them, so.
I'll see you at one of them.
Yeah,
Thanks for the heads up.
absolutely.
Oh, you won't be able to be. You know.
I do think a lot of the entrepreneurship is temperament. And I mean, I can't say that anybody tell me what to do. I can be in charge. So I'm a bad employee.
Be a good developer.
Well, yeah. That's your point. That's the point, yeah. And it's just,
no, I don't know.
A shortcoming, really.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, Seymour Schulich, who's our benefactor, and he's made a lot of money. And he's stepping back and is letting his daughter, training his daughter to run the foundation. And she said to me the other day, she's a good friend, she said, you know, I feel like I've realized my father's a magician, and he's now taken me behind the curtains to show me, you know,
where the rabbit is.
Yeah. And she said, you know, I never knew what he did. You know, it was funny because he's sort of an entrepreneur in that he's, you know, made a lot of money, but most of it he gives back to education. But it was funny saying, you know, that I feel like, you know, he took me behind the curtain and began to show me his magic.
She didn't say the emperor had no clothes though, did she?
No. But I understood what she was getting at. I mean, they're just things you can't teach.
Yeah. Well, but I think so much of it too, it has been, that's the best part of our program, is they don't have to have an uncle or father to show them what to do. They can come to our classes and spend a year and get an entree to the business.
But you know, the other thing is that you're in a great, the U.S. is in a great position to take advantage of some of this stuff, because when I do deal with my Asian students, and I don't mean to sound mean, but as long as it's quantitative, they're happy.
Yeah.
But don't steer very far off that path. And conceptually thinking, and the majority of engineering degrees, not to put down your degree.
Oh, no.
But
no.
The majority, almost all of them come in with engineering degrees.
Can I actually emphasize that? You know, as an engineer, right, a few years ago, my wife and I wanted to send our kids back to Africa to go to school, just to emphasize your point. And we had them take the national exams, the qualifying exams in Nigeria to get into one of the top schools, the Jesuit school, and they didn't do well. So it was an American provost in the school. He'd been trying to get more Americans in, right? So I went to him and had a conversation with him. Then I went to the school that my kids were attending here, right? And I had a conversation with the educators there. Now, I tried to pay my daughter's math teacher to prepare my oldest daughter for this exam, and she had turned it down. And you know the reason? She said, my daughter was in 5th or 6th grade at this point. Her argument was that the 8th and 9th graders would struggle with the material. So here's the outcome of what I found. In Africa, India, China, the emphasis on education is on rote learning.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah, they're
a lot of rote learning, and I grew up in that system, so I got it. Here, early on, I guess the assumption is the brain's not as developed, so we let them.
We have them come in with the GMAT of 700, and then you think I don't know if you have that problem, but they don't live up to that number.
We had that problem in Wharton. I went to the Wharton School for my MBA. I had classmates that scored 800, 780 from India and China. India, English is the language there, so that's not an issue, but Chinese counterparts, I had people in my class that was 780, and I would look at them and I would say, how did you get a 780 score? And here's what I found out. They start preparing 10 years ahead of time in some cases. They take the exams over and over.
None of our American students had over 700.
No.
Yeah, but half of our Chinese students did. And the American students carried the classes.
Well, that's the thing, that's the great opportunity, because even if you look at China today, how many world brands do they have? Well, they bought Lenovo, right? But think of it. Okay, now the Koreans have a few, but in terms of world brands, the U.S. firms are head and shoulders above America. No, they better not lose that.
See you guys.